let's talk about Bernie Sanders, because that is Peter was talking about Bernie Sanders, and it brings me to the article from Fusion that a lot of people have been talking about all day long. I did my best to wait till tonight to discuss this article, but to no avail. I had to talk about it on Twitter at length. And the article is by Terrell Jermaine Starr. And the article is entitled "How Bernie Sanders Lost Black Voters." And it's a well-written piece. So, and I think it's probably doing really good. So from one media head to another, congrats on a great successful piece. A lot of hits. That's a big thing for people in media. I think that, I'm trying to think of all the positive things I could say about it first. Well, anyway, okay. So I'm not gonna address the article per se, but what I do want to address is that hopefully, I really hope that this is the last. I hope this is the death pangs. This is the last jerk and whatever of this narrative that Bernie Sanders had a minority problem. Now, this one's different. I'll give it to this. This one, he actually sourced and went to some of the black staffers for Bernie Sanders, and you read the article. Go read the article, and it's a good article in that he has some inside information from people who worked, and I actually can vouch for some of it, right? Because I was approached by some staffers. I won't name the names, but I was approached with a similar story, with the exact same story, right? But it never, I guess they ended up going over there, which is cool. Well, I can understand why, right? But I can vouch and validate some of his sources that this is something that was the reality for the sentiment and the reality for some of the black Bernie Sanders staffers was that Bernie Sanders' team, even though Bernie Sanders was sincere, some of the leadership in his team were not providing adequate resources, did not show that they were truly interested in getting the black vote. Now, this is something that I've heard from people in that article, as well as people who are not quoted in this article, right? And so this is what Terrell actually presented. And so I have no qualms with that whatsoever, except for this minor detail, right? Everyone's reality is their reality, and we need to give respect and space for their reality. There are some black staffers on the Bernie Sanders team who felt that Bernie Sanders slighted the black community. There are people who are not on Bernie Sanders teams who felt that way. However, there are other black staffers on Bernie Sanders' team who completely reject that notion that I've spoken to. Right. There are other staffers on Bernie Sanders' team who have a totally different reality than the one that Terrell shared, that Terrell Starr and Fusion shared. Right. And I'm only saying that not to criticize his article. I'm saying that because we have to be careful in media, or I would hope in an idealistic sense that we would be careful not to pass off someone's subjective reality as though it is an objective truth. And that's one of my biggest qualms with a lot of media in general. When I tell you that I'm giving you an opinion, I'm pretty clear about it. This is my opinion. And I never try to pass off my opinion or my sources who are giving me their opinion as though it is the objective truth. And in a lot of ways, the narrative that not only Terrell was forwarding, but many of those in black media are forwarding is the subjective reality that someone experienced. But there's always two sides of every story, right? There's vantage points for everything. No one sees things. And the best example is the example in the article about Morehouse, where there was a Bernie Sanders staffer who went in advance to set up a rally at Morehouse. And this was a black staffer. And the story that was the vantage point of the particular narrative that Terrell forwarded was one that this black staffer, and even right, it was this sense of sensationalization that even the black Bernie Sanders staffers didn't really value the black community, because this black staffer who went to Morehouse was so disrespectful to the people at Morehouse that they had to call and report it to the Vermont main office. Well, there's a different perspective on that, and that is the other individual involved in that kerfuffle. Now, I'm getting into the weeds, but I'm going to, hopefully you've read the article. It's been out. It's been retweeted like 50,000 times. It's a really popular article. I'm getting into the weeds because if we're going to present someone's perspective as a objective truth, as evidence that there is a problem, then you damn well better have the alternate voice. That is, if you're trying to be an unbiased observer. Which gets me to the ultimate point of my only reason I bring this up is that too many journalists, quote unquote journalists, are passing off, and they have been doing this forever, but very maliciously so in this primary season, particularly black journalists, have been passing off this narrative of Bernie Sanders having a quote unquote minority problem. They've been passing it off as objective reality, when in reality, it is just their commentary. Even when you, let's go to journalism school. Even when you present someone's subjective reality, this is what they believed happened to them. Therefore, it is something that should be heard. It is something that should be respected. It is something that people should give space to, listen to, hear, and make, because there's two sides of every conversation. So, but even when you're presenting that, unless you have the countervailing voice, then you cannot present it as though it is the objective truth. And that is something that we are notorious for doing in this clickbait society, is that we take someone's opinion and we pass it off as though it is good as gold. Yes, to be sure, there are black Bernie Sanders staffers who have complaints about the campaign. I probably wouldn't say much if the campaign had won, because that's just how it goes. We do remember the great falling out of Hillary Clinton's campaign in 2008. I mean, you think this is ugly? You should take a look back at how people were betraying. I mean, just cutthroat, saving their asses for Hillary Clinton. This is what people do. And not to belittle their subjective reality. This is what they experienced. This is what they felt. Respect that. But that can't be passed off as though it is an objective truth. Not if you are trying to present yourself as a legitimate journalist who wants to present the facts instead of trying to forward a narrative. The way I know this, now this is just another part of the narrative in this article was that people felt as though he didn't believe in the black community because he wasn't giving the necessary resources and funding to his black team, the team that was responsible for African-American outreach. Well, Simone Sanders, who, the press secretary, I forgot her official title, is late, for Bernie Sanders, but she tweeted this out, and this is what she perceived, right? She says, "Since when is 24 staffers, your own budget, and an independent office, quote unquote, underfunded?" So, she didn't make a lot of hay out of it. She just said her truth. Her truth is, when you have all of these resources, you have all of this staff and an independent office, in her opinion, you got what you needed. Now, I've been nice. Here's the part that pisses me off, is that this has been a concerted effort for a very long time by many in media to forward and perpetuate this narrative that Bernie Sanders has a race problem. Could Bernie Sanders have done better in the black community in terms of outreach? Hell yeah. I mean, Dixon, I said that like 10 months ago, right? I'm on the record. I got videos of it. But Bernie Sanders had to do better in the black community. So this is by no means any way of trying to defend Bernie Sanders on his failings in the African-American community. Not at all. What it is to say is you have to be aware of these sleight of hands that come from media all the day long. It's not just Terrell's article. I think his article was pretty good, but there was a lot of sleight of hands done in that article, in my opinion. It was passing off and continuing and getting some clicks off a very successful narrative that Bernie Sanders has a race problem, that Bernie Sanders doesn't care about the black community. And congratulations, you guys made a lot of hay out of this, but to be sure, the jig is up. We know the game, we peep game, and we know exactly what to do going forward. So thank you for putting all of your cards on the table, because we know, and I'm not even speaking on behalf of Bernie Sanders' campaign. I'm speaking on behalf of the lengths to which the Democratic establishment and the media establishment, the political and economic and media elite go to protect the establishment. We see now the lengths that you would go. I mean, everything from the New York Times down to Fusion, down to clickbait sites, it has all been about getting those clicks as an African-American pushing this narrative. And then, of course, you had a couple white people do the same thing. But the point of it is, once Bernie Sanders endorses Hillary Clinton tomorrow, that should be the end of this narrative. And what we need to do as progressives is to take every single article that they use, that they put out to push this narrative, and use it. Don't throw it away. Don't dismiss it. Don't try to debunk it. Don't try to do anything but use it against them. That's their strategy. That's their play. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, you can't fool me again. I said it exactly how I wanted to say it.